Good morning, everyone. Today I'm going to say about the external ear. This ear, it is the organ of hearing and it also maintains the equilibrium of the body. That means it maintains the balance of the body. And here you can see the diagram of the ear, and it is divided into external ear, and this is the middle ear, which is also called as tympanic cavity containing the ear ossicles, and this is the inner ear, which is also called as labyrinth. Young adults are responsive to the sound frequencies ranging from 20 to 20,000 Hz. Now let us see the parts of the ear. So the external ear, it conducts the sound waves from the external environment and conveys it to the tympanic membrane. So this is the tympanic membrane which keeps on vibrating when it receives the sound waves. Now it will be conveyed to the middle ear. So this is the middle ear cavity which intensifies the force of the sound vibration without altering any amplitude of the sound, and it will be conveying to the internal ear. Now what happens here, when the sound waves they reach the internal ear, that will be converted into the nerve energy. In this diagram you can see the internal ear, that is labyrinth, and here you can see the vestibulocochlear nerve. So this internal ear, it is mainly concerned with the conversion of sound energy into the nerve energy. So this internal ear, it conveys the sense of hearing and equilibrium by the cochlear and vestibular division of vestibulocochlear nerve. So here you can see, here in this diagram you can see the internal ear where it is connected to the eighth cranial nerve. This is the vestibulocochlear nerve. Now let us see the external ear. In this class we are going to see about the external ear alone. So what are the parts of the external ear? It consists of auricle or the pinna, and the other one is external acoustic meatus or external auditory meatus. And in this class only we are going to see about the tympanic membrane. Actually this tympanic membrane, it belongs to the middle ear cavity, acting like a partition between the external ear and the middle ear. So these three we will see today. Now let us see the auricle, which is the largest elastic cartilage in the body. See this diagram. Here you can see the auricle or the pinna, and here you can see an outer margin here. This is called as helix. So this is the anterior limb and this is the posterior limb, or the posterior margin and anterior margin. So this anterior margin of the helix, it descends down into the concha as crest of the helix, and in the posterior part of this helix, or the descending part of this helix, you can see a small elevation here called as Darwin's tubercle. Look into this schematic diagram here. You can see this is the helix, which is having a anterior limb or the anterior margin, which is descending down into the concha as crest of the helix. And if you see the posterior margin of this helix, it has a prominent tubercle known as Darwin's tubercle, and this helix below it continues into the fibrofatty tissue, that is the ear lobule. Now running parallel to this one in front, here you can see the antihelix. This antihelix above, it divides into two limbs, that is scrotum of the antihelix, which is enclosing a triangular area that is called as triangular fossa. Now there is a space which is present between the helix and the antihelix. which is called as scaphoid fossa. Now let us go back to the schematic diagram. Here you can see the antihelix, where above it is splitting into two crura, enclosing a space here that is called as triangular fossa, and the space which is present between the helix and the antihelix, that is called as scaphoid fossa. Now this crus of the helix, it is dividing the concha into a upper smaller area and a lower larger area. So this upper smaller area is called as cymboconcha. Now below this is the concha, where it is bounded in front by the tragus, and opposite to that one there is antitragus. Here you can see this is the tragus which is guarding this concha in front, and behind there is antitragus. Now below here you can see where the cartilage is absent, just only a fibrofatty tissue covered by the skin is present. So this is called as ear lobule. Generally there will be a piercing here, whoever wears the earrings. So this is the place where the piercing will be done, so to avoid damage to the cartilage. Now let us see the muscles of the auricle. So here you can see the muscles of the auricles, which are divided into extrinsic and intrinsic. Here you can see the extrinsic muscles which are attached to the auricle. This is auricularis anterior, posterior and superior. So these muscles, their action, they are not significant in case of mankind. Even it has got an intrinsic and extrinsic ligaments. So the extrinsic ligaments, they connect the auricle with the temporal bone, whereas the intrinsic ligaments, they connect the tragus with the crest of the helix, and also they complete the external meatus in front. Now coming to the skin of the auricle. The skin, it is adherent to the cartilage, which contains numerous sebaceous glands. So these sebaceous glands, those are prominent in concha and the scaphoid fossa. And here the place in between the tragus and the antitragus and the intertragic area, it sometimes in case of males, that is mostly in case of Y-linked inheritance, you can see a distribution of the hair. Hairy pinna is seen in case of Y-linked inheritance in case of males. Coming to the nerve supply of the auricle, it has got sensory and motor innervation. Motor innervation is to the muscles attached to the auricle, that is extrinsic muscles, which are auricularis anterior, posterior and superior, innervated by the facial nerve through the temporal and posterior auricular branches. Coming to the sensory innervation, the medial surface of the auricle in the upper one third, it is supplied by the lesser occipital nerve, whereas in the lower two third, it is supplied by the great auricular nerve. Now coming to the innervation on the lateral surface. So the sensory innervation is through auriculotemporal nerve in the upper two third, whereas lower one third, it is innervated by great auricular nerve, that is area of the ear lobule, it is innervated by great auricular nerve. The root of the auricle, it is innervated by auricular branch of the vagus nerve. Coming to the arterial supply of the auricle, it is supplied by the posterior auricular artery, which is a branch of external carotid artery. So this posterior auricular artery, it supplies the upper and posterior part of the lateral surface of the auricle, whereas the superficial temporal artery, through the anterior auricular artery. It supplies the anterior part of the lateral surface of the auricle. From the posterior aspect, there will be branches from the occipital artery, which is in turn a branch of external carotid artery. Coming to the venous drainage. So the veins accompany the corresponding arteries which drain into superficial temporal vein and external jugular vein. Coming to the lymphatic drainage. The lymphatics, they drain into the parotid lymph nodes which are present in front of the tragus, mastoid or posterior auricular group of lymph nodes which are present behind the auricle, and they drain into upper deep cervical lymph nodes. These are the three lymph nodes which are draining the auricle, that is pre and post auricular and upper deep cervical lymph nodes. Now let us see the external auditory meatus, which extends from bottom of the concha to the tympanic membrane, and it measures about 24 mm long, and it has a S-shaped curve. Let us see the parts of the external acoustic meatus. It has got a outer part and an inner part. So the outer part is pars externa, whereas the intermediate part is pars intermedia. The innermost one is pars interna. So in your textbooks, it has given only two parts, that is outer part and the inner part. So if you see the direction of the pars externa, it is directed upwards, forwards, medially, whereas pars intermedia, this is intermedia which is directed upwards, backwards, medially, whereas this is pars interna which is directed downwards, forwards, medially, that is towards the tympanic membrane. And if you want to see the alignment of it, so remember this external acoustic meatus, it is not a straight tube, so it is having a S-shaped curve. So in order to see the tympanic membrane through the ear speculum, you need to pull this one upwards, backwards and laterally, so that you will get a straight line to see the tympanic membrane. Now coming to the subdivisions of the external acoustic meatus, it is made up of partly bony and partly cartilaginous. So in this diagram you can see the external acoustic meatus, where its length is about 24 millimeters, and in that the outer one third it is cartilaginous, whereas inner two third it is bony. This cartilaginous part, it is continuous with the cartilage of the auricle, and it is absent in the upper and posterior part, whereas the bony part, it is made up of tympanic plate below and in front, whereas above and behind it is made up of squamous part of the temporal bone. So coming to the tympanic membrane damage in the children, how it happens. In case of children, this bony part of the external acoustic meatus will not be developed. As a result, this meatus, it will be very short. Then while you insert a ear speculum to see the tympanic membrane due to the short external acoustic meatus, so here there will be a damage of the tympanic membrane. So remember this when you go to the clinical side in your postings of ENT. So remember this, in case of children, the external acoustic meatus, it is very short because the bony part will not be developed in them. So the speculum, don't insert it deep. Coming to the constriction, at the junction of bony part and the cartilaginous part, there is a isthmus connecting those two parts. Coming to the epithelium, so externally it is covered by the skin which is continuous with the pinna, and internally it is covered by or lined by cuticular layer. And there are numerous ceruminous glands which are present within the external acoustic meatus. What are these ceruminous glands? These are nothing but the modified sweat glands which secretes the cerumen, which is nothing but the ear wax. So why this ear wax is needed? Because this wax, it prevents the entry of the insects, and it also maintains the warm humid environment. Why this warm humid environment is required in the external acoustic meatus? Because this environment, it is useful for effective vibration of the tympanic membrane. Coming to the applied anatomy, tympanic membrane damage in children. I said you previously only that in case of children the bony part is not well developed. As a result, the meatus is very short, so inserting a speculum deep may damage the tympanic membrane. So that is about the tympanic membrane damage in children. The other thing is, if any foreign body is stuck at the level of isthmus, you should be very careful while removing it, because isthmus is a very narrow part, and while removing it, it should not be damaged. The other one is ceruminosis, which is nothing but excessive secretion of the wax or the cerumen. What happens if excessive secretion is there? It blocks the meatus. Not only that, it also impedes with the transmission of the sound vibrations. So how to drain this excessive wax? It is by syringing a lukewarm water into the meatus. If during this process, during the syringing, if the auricular branch of the vagus is irritated, then it may result in coughing and vomiting. In elderly people, there are chances even it leads to the heart failure also. Then coming to the inflammation of external acoustic meatus. Inflammation or infection of the external acoustic meatus are very painful, because due to the involvement of the skin. Coming to the last part of this class, that is tympanic membrane. So this tympanic membrane, it is a trilaminar, oval shaped, semi-transparent membrane. Here you can see which is oval shaped, which is obliquely placed, trilaminar membrane. Its diameter is 9 to 10 millimeter maximum, and the minimum is 8 to 9 millimeter. Coming to the position, in case of adults it is obliquely placed, whereas in case of newborn it is horizontally placed. Because it is horizontally placed, the newborns, they can withstand the noisy sound. Coming to the location, the tympanic membrane, it is located within the tympanic sulcus, which is located at the bottom of external acoustic meatus. And remember, the tympanic sulcus, it is not complete, it is deficient above, exactly at the level of anterior and posterior malleolar folds. The circumference of the tympanic membrane is covered by fibrocartilaginous ring. Now coming to the parts of the tympanic membrane, it has got two parts, that is pars tensa and pars flaccida. So coming to the pars flaccida, this is the upper triangular lax area which is present above the anterior malleolar fold and posterior malleolar fold. In this diagram you can see this is the anterior malleolar fold, this is the posterior malleolar fold, and this lax area is the pars flaccida, and rest of the area below, which is completely membranous. You can see the handle of the malleus. From there you can see the radiating fibers which are taut by the handle of the malleus. So this is called as pars tensa. Now let us see the surfaces. The tympanic membrane, it has got two surfaces, a lateral surface and a medial surface. The lateral surface is facing towards the external acoustic meatus, whereas the medial surface, it is projecting towards the tympanic cavity. Here you can see the middle of the tympanic cavity with the ossicles. Here you can see malleus, incus and stapes. And this is the enlarged schematic diagram. Here you can see the malleus and incus. Now let us see the surfaces. The lateral surface, it is concave in nature, which is directed downwards, forwards and laterally. So this yellow color here, it indicates the outer surface, that is lateral surface of the tympanic membrane. Now coming to the medial surface. The medial surface here, if you see, it is convex and it is bulging towards the tympanic cavity. So here you can see the convexity, and this convexity, the point of maximum convexity on the medial surface, is called as umbo. So this is the maximum convexity point, which is called as umbo. And this surface, it receives the handle of the malleus in between the fibrous layer and the mucous layer. Here you can see the enlarged diagram. This is the handle of the malleus and this is the schematic diagram of the tympanic membrane, where you can see the attachment of the handle of the malleus. Here you can see the medial view of the tympanic membrane. The handle of the malleus, medially it is crossed by the chordae tympani nerve, which is running in between the fibrous and mucous layer, and here you can see it is crossing at the junction of pars flaccida, and this is the pars flaccida and this is the pars tensa. So at the junction of these two, the chordae tympani nerve is crossing the medial side of handle of the malleus. Coming to the structure of the tympanic membrane, so it consists of three layers: outer cuticular layer, middle fibrous layer and inner mucous layer. Now let us see the outer cuticular layer. This is towards the external acoustic meatus. As already you know, the external acoustic meatus, it is lined by the skin. So the same skin, it continues here over the tympanic membrane. So that means it is lined by the stratified squamous keratinized epithelium. The only difference is here you won't find any hair follicles. It is devoid of hair and it is also devoid of dermal papillae. Now coming to the intermediate layer. So this intermediate layer, it consists of inner circular fibers and outer radiating fibers. So in this diagram you can see from the handle of the malleus, you can see many fibers which are going towards the periphery. Now coming to the last layer, that is mucous layer, which is made up of either simple columnar or simple squamous epithelium. Coming to the nerve supply of the tympanic membrane, the outer surface of the tympanic membrane is supplied by the two nerves. That is, auriculotemporal nerve will be supplying the anterior half, whereas auricular branch of the vagus nerve will be supplying the posterior half. Now coming to the nerve supply of the inner surface, it is supplied by the tympanic branch of the glossopharyngeal nerve via the tympanic plexus. Coming to the arterial supply, it is supplied by three arteries. One is the deep auricular branch of the maxillary artery. It supplies the cuticular layer, whereas the stylomastoid branch of the posterior auricular artery and the anterior tympanic branch of maxillary artery, both will be supplying the mucus layer. Coming to the venous drainage, the outer layer drains into the external jugular vein, whereas the inner layer it drains into the transverse sinus and pterygoid venous plexus. Coming to the lymphatic drainage, the lymphatics drain into the preauricular lymph nodes and retropharyngeal lymph nodes. Coming to the most important part of the tympanic membrane, that is development of the tympanic membrane, which is very important and is frequently asked in your exams. So why this development is important is because these three layers they are derived from the three germ layers of the embryonic disc, that is ectoderm, endoderm and mesoderm. Now let us see one by one. The outer cuticular layer it is derived from the ectoderm of the dorsal end of the first branchial arch, whereas the intermediate fibrous layer it is derived from the mesoderm of the adjoining arches, whereas the inner mucus layer it is derived from the endoderm of tubotympanic recess. So if you go from outside to inside, it is ecto, meso and endoderm. Now let us see the examination of the ear. Now if you want to see the tympanic membrane of the inside ear, here you can see an instrument which is used to see that is called as otoscope, and the clinical procedure which is used to visualize the inner ear, that is called as otoscopy. So here you can see the structure of the tympanic membrane. You can see the handle of the malleus, anterior malleolar fold, posterior malleolar fold, and you can see the pars flaccida, and you can see the pars tensa. And here you are going to see a cone of light at the anteroinferior quadrant, and here you can see the radiating fibers, and parallel to the handle of the malleus behind you can see the long process of the incus. So this is the examination of the tympanic membrane. Here you can see, if you look through the otoscope, how the tympanic membrane looks like. And here this is the schematic diagram of the tympanic membrane. Let us see the examination of it. So if you put a otoscope and look into the ear, you are going to see the cone of light as a reflection in the anteroinferior quadrant of the membrane. Here you can see the cone of light. The same schematic diagram here you can observe. Then the most important striking feature which you are going to see is the handle of the malleus. Here you can see the handle of the malleus. Running parallelly behind that, here you can see the long process of the incus. This is the long process of incus. So these are the three prominent features of the otoscopy. Here, cone of light, handle of the malleus and long process of the incus. And here you can see the pars tensa, and this will be the pars flaccida. Coming to the clinical anatomy, so examination of the tympanic membrane. Already we have seen this one in the previous slide. We'll see the next one, that is perforation of the tympanic membrane. So the perforation of the tympanic membrane, it occurs either due to external injury or due to the infection of middle ear. Now coming to the meningitis, it is nothing but the inflammation of the tympanic membrane. Now meningiotomy. Meningiotomy, it is a surgical incision which is given to the tympanic membrane to relieve the pressure of the tympanic membrane. Meningioplasty, it is a surgical procedure where a part of the tympanic membrane, that is pars tensa, is closed when there is a perforation.